Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Pinos Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. And I have up here in the Pinos Palace, I have Max and Daisy, my Czechoslovakian red German shepherds that are patrolling the grounds, keeping us safe as we stream to you live. Tonight's special movie, Slaughter in San Francisco, with Chuck Norris as the bad guy. And I've got from the great Midwest RDV, who does a lot of this crazy shit with me. And we're going to be talking about a movie that has like Don Yen starring as Don Yen that was supposed to be Bruce Lee, and it's RDV. This is a really bad, horrible movie, and I don't care because just to kind of reiterate for those getting ready to join in with Chuck Norris films, we've covered a lot of them, certainly not all of them, but as you know, RDV, we talked about the Chuck Norris template. We've used that as our basis to relate everything to the 80s and action and canon films and all that. This is a movie that's filmed like in 71, 72-ish. And it was shelled by Golden Harvest, one of the biggest names over there in the Hong Kong, China area for martial arts. There's another one whose name escapes me off the top of my head. We've talked about him before. And the way this movie was made was when Bruce Lee died in the early 70s, they wanted to capitalize on his death by having Bruce L-E-I or Bruce L-I rather than Bruce L-E-Es, right? Yeah. So they found some dude that kind of looked like him, and when he would strike and pose, he would look just like Bruce Lee. And they said, shit, we can make money with this guy, but we got to have a hook because he's a new boy. We'll get this guy, Chuck Norris, who's like a badass martial artist who's, barely breaking into movies. He just starred, of course, as the bad guy with Bruce Lee in one of his movies. Let's get him as the bad guy because, boy, oh boy, Chuck Norris did not like the fact this movie got released once he hit it big in the early 80s because he did everything he can to stop it, and he couldn't. The reason why Chuck Norris did not want this here is because he's wearing pimp hats, he's got drivers, he's got an entourage, he's the bad guy, and he's hairy chested. And oh my God, what makes this really horrible movie even worse, but so much better, is the fact that even Chuck Norris's voice is dubbed, at least in the version that I watched. Yep. Tremendously horrible film, highly grossly entertaining. A hell of a lot more action than you think it would have, and I got to give it a lot of credit for that too, because I could give two shits about who the lead guy is or ever will. But Chuck Norris is a bad guy, pimping and strolling around San Francisco. This is a really fun bad movie. It's your absolute perfect definition of a B movie. What's your initial take?
Same thing. As soon as I realized, wait, Chuck Norris, you dubbed the man? They must be too afraid to use his voice. Seriously, we talk about movies. Yeah, we talk about movies that they're so awful, but yet we cannot stop watching them. This is one of those things. It wasn't really a train wreck for me. It was obviously there's bad acting, bad dialogue, but as it seemed like every 5 minutes there was a group of guys fighting against the main good guy, and then then we get a scene of Chuck Norris. He's like he's the pimp, he's the guy in there, and he's like, hey, I'll make you famous, kid. Work for me. And it's like, you have this, otherwise, where else? And it's just like, and then we see him train Manaj, with well, not run Manaj, but we basically see Chuck Norris fighting and taking out a bunch of guys, getting karate. And the one thing that stood up for this whole entire movie is that I understand why he didn't want anybody to see this, because they showed his awful back hair. How he goes only on the shoulder blades, and then he has like a little bit down the back,
and it keeps going.
And
front and back.
It's all bald in the back, like he shaved it. It's like, what the heck? And it's like, no wonder he didn't want anybody to see this. But wow. Like I said, the martial arts, when like the karate, when they do this, you hear the cheap sound effects.
Love it.
It sounds even better. Like it just basically sounds like
slapping salami, right?
It sounds like Fist of Fury. It sounds like Bruce Lee.
Yep.
And this guy, Don Wong, is
not Juan, but Wong. I'm saying that to everybody else. I'm just clarifying that because that's important.
With a G at the end. Yeah. So
correct.
And so the actor his character's name is Officer Don Wong. So anyway, so him and his partner, and I don't think I think it's supposed to be Robert Jones is the actor, but is John Summer. Him and his guy, they basically play two beat cops are going out, and then first gonna come across this girl. They're like, oh, and they see the legs sticking out, so they quick slam the brakes. They think that she's dead. Turns out it's just a woman getting down with her man. So they're like, oh, to chuckle, and they get back in their car, like, oh, and they drive on, and then they hear a lady scream, "Help me!" And this is that Sylvia Zhu, also known as Sylvia Jang, the actress, and it looks like she's being assaulted by two men.
Mm-hmm.
So they chase the two guys and beat them up. And they bring them down to the shop, the precinct. And now this, I gotta say though,
It was a nice little twist, huh?
Captain Newman, played by Daniel Ivan. Wow.
What a dick.
I know. But seriously, this guy, I thought, I clearly, you told me in the beginning, this guy is he's just a really prick or he's on a take or both. And it's just, he just comes off, he's like, well, basically it was harassing both of them. And because the lady said, well, she said, oh, these two guys, this is a game we're playing. They weren't really, and it's not like she's being threatened or something. No, she's actually does, she thinks she's actually dating one of the guys.
Mm-hmm.
And the other guy was his friend. And so they walk, the captain yells at them. Like I said, dude, it was kind of like really like, what is the storyline going here? But then you find out that they got a bank's robbed.
It's all connected.
Yeah, it's all connected. The bank robbed. They saw these poor guy, old man and his Chinese old man and his wife. They turns out to be Sylvia's parents. They're framed for the bank robbery and also for not the murder, but the murder of John Summer. Yes, because John Summer. Now this is the crazy part, dude. We saw Officer Wong and Officer Summer both just shit-faced drunk, walking out. They could barely stand, walking out. They did a little fight move, and they kind of play fighting. They walk away, and then instantly, just like crazy, from night and day, John Summer, the officer, just he gets in a fight with these guys. The bank robber chases them, gets in a fight with them, and he's basically kicking their ass. He's instantly sober, bro.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Who wrote that? I'm looking up right now. I gotta figure out who wrote this because, okay, way low. He was also the director. I want to know what else is he also.
He's done a lot. He was involved in some of Bruce Lee's earlier films, and they had a big falling out. And so while he made movies kind of formulaic in a way, certainly entertaining and profitable, that was the whole Golden Harvest model, if you will. Like we talk about certain models today, like Blumhouse and such. And so that was one of the big reasons why he said, hey, I can do this. So let me pause here for a minute and kind of give a little bit of a backdrop because it explains what it is we're seeing. This is not supposed to be a Chuck Norris film. He's in it as the bad guy in several scenes, but he's not the main central character. He's the heavy, which is rare. He's always wanted to protect this wholesome image and everything too. Johnny and Chet's been talking about, Hero of Terror and Sidekicks and other ones that we remember him as a good guy. But yeah, this film, like I said, was shot in the early 70s, not really released over here. And it's not an American film. It's Golden Harvest, so it's Asian. And so what's interesting to me about it, though, RDV, is the fact that the Golden Harvest was at least in tune to the societal times in some of the movies, because really, honestly, if you want to categorize this movie, even though you say it's a martial arts film, it's really not either, even though there's a ton of it. It's a blaxploitation movie because Wong's partner, who's black, gets killed eventually in it. And so there's this pseudo revenge angle. And it is kind of like a buddy cop thing early on, right? And there's a ton of martial arts, but they were smart because when you watch this, you're like, wait a minute, it's Asian sounding, but they got the funky, scratchy guitar stuff going on. They got it's like every other shot is like a crash zoom where you zoom in really quick on something. I mean, the editing is horrible. It's disgusting. It's amateurish in a way, but like you said, it's like a train wreck. You can't keep your eyes off of it watching it. And then when Chuck Norris pops out, the scene I remember early on was, our cop guy goes to save his buddy who's been kidnapped on the beach. And so they have a big fight, like you said. And this is a movie where everybody knows martial arts. There's just a question of to what level. So I love that personally. Everybody, every age, different style, it doesn't matter. The action scenes are pretty good. But he accidentally kills the guy. So he says he gets kicked out of the cop force. So he goes, get this, he's a Chinese dude. So he goes to work in a Chinese restaurant in San Francisco, right? And so he's making tips. And so he's called over to serve Chuck Norris. And Chuck Norris is a bad guy sitting there, and he talks like this, because it's dubbed. Yeah. But what Chuck Norris does is he takes his cigar, and he just reaches out and burns him on his friggin' hand. And then he tells his lackey, his number one, he goes, give him $500. And then they leave. And then he goes, boss wants to see you, and he's not the kind of guy you say no. Meet him on the hill, and you're like, what the fuck's going on? This sounds stupid, but I like it because in the
Yep.
same scene there, he meets that same woman you talked about with those same two guys, right? And so you're
Yep.
like, where's this going? So it's horrible, but they're trying to put a lot of stuff in it, and I appreciate that attempt.
Yeah. So, in case people were wondering, it's called Slaughter in San Francisco. That was the U.S. release title with the
Yes.
bad English dub. If you want to watch the original uncut, it's called Yellow Face Tiger.
Yes.
You might be able to find it through Amazon, maybe on DVD somewhere. This seems like one of those rare movies to find in a normal language because it's basically Mandarin. Even though it was a Hong Kong American martial arts, film. It's clearly 70s, man.
Yes.
The way everybody acts, dressed, so you got that.
Smoking everywhere. I loved it.
I know, right? And then you see him later while Chuck Norris is at the end. He's watching the officer Don Wong, fight a bunch of his men. He's just sitting there eating a grapefruit, I think.
He's chilling. He's watching the action. He's evaluating talent.
And
he's thinking before acting. He's a smart bad guy.
So if you're one of those people that only care to watch like the parts where Chuck Norris is pretty much in, or they're doing the fighting, it's just like was Action USA or what was it? Or yeah, the very last 4 minutes of this movie is where you get to see Chuck Norris fighting, like seriously fighting against the main good guy, Don Wong. And I gotta say, it's like they're fighting, and then Don kicks him Chuck into the fountain, and then they're all wet, and then he jumps out on him. He's like, in slow motion, and then Chuck rips the guy's shirt off. Of course, you got an excuse to show the man good guy.
Absolutely,
good guys.
You have to. Shirts have to get ripped off. That's a good.
And the way he does, and he's like, I was like, man, this is like really bad knockoff of Fist of Fury in a sense. There really was no plot. Really, the plot was so weak. It was so bad that even the main guy Don, who basically officer he got kicked out of the force, ends up being I guess by the commissioner or something, or the new captain basically gives him his job back. He's like, hey, you need a gun. He's like, I don't believe in guns. I'm like, dude, you're in San Francisco, bro. It's part of the program. You're not special just because you're Chinese or whatever. It's like I was like, this is like so fake. And it's like I said, it ends up with him saying like, and you see Sylvia is like, oh, thank you. I'm like, first of all, I wouldn't trust that girl. I'm so glad that he didn't try to get with her, or she tried to get with him. Because I'm thinking she was involved in all this stuff. How is she like innocent and all this stuff? How much she didn't go to jail?
Because she's probably really the ringleader in a way, but she did a good job of I think watching. Let me ask you this though, because one thing you and I've talked about with martial arts movies, not just Chuck Norris or ADs or Canon films or all the different ones we've covered here on the Xtreme Movie Show, definitely from different cultures. We've handpicked some just to be diverse about it. Early on, we see Chuck Norris and he's at his compound, right? And he's got the fountain and he's got his henchmen basically there, bunch of black belts that he beats up. They're doing stuff like holding the boards for him so he can get his afternoon workout before he sits down and have a smoke, right?
Yep.
And I'm watching it and I'm going, I've seen Chuck Norris clips of him back when he was actually a professional, fighter and going all that back in the 70s. I mean, he's legit. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He's not, the same vein as like a Schwarzenegger, but he's legit and that his skills are pure. And what strikes me is this. When he does the little bit and he's just doing the board breaking stuff, you can call it fake boards or whatever. I swear to God, I don't think it's sped up, but the fucker's just explosively, like not the way we're used to seeing it in 80s films. I was really shocked. It kind of blew me away because remember, this was shot back like 71, 72. So it's peak Norris physicality wise, but you don't see that because his job obviously with Bruce Lee is to make Bruce look good, right? But in here, as the bad guy, he doesn't have to follow those rules necessarily. Of course, he has to lose and take the beating. But just him doing stuff, I'm telling you, he's got that. It comes across. I was actually impressed by it. I don't think they sped up. And I wanted to ask you if you thought they did with these fights.
I don't think they did either because I think he was – who's that the guy you like? The guy who basically you see him running on top of people, does all the moves. He's not Jet Li, but he's like he's a short little guy. Ong Bak.
Well, Ong Bak, the Thai warrior, he's done a lot of crazy stuff where they would zoom and repeat it a few times. We've mentioned that.
But it wasn't like sped up though when they fought. And that's what and that's what I get from Don Wong and Chuck Norris here. It's not sped up. Obviously, the sound effects though are added to it because when you kick somebody, it's not that loud.
Yeah.
And it's choreography, so they're not really hitting that hard. They're just moving that fast. Still, you can, if you mess up, you can get kicked in the face for real hard. But yeah, like I said, like this is we talk about people doing stunts stuff. Chuck Norris doing his own karate stuff. He's basically the stunt man. You know, that's what we want. We want a guy who's a lead guy, but also does his own martial arts moves and does it without having to have somebody come in and do stunts. Like that's why I always like Jackie Chan. I'd rather watch a movie by someone who's doing martial arts versus someone who's just like doesn't do any stunts whatsoever. Because as I was saying, it's just more a high respect that they earn. And so we talk about this. I guess this being a low budget, very low budget. The LA Times, was talking about it and saying was like, you could tell it's just so they're just basically banking on his current fame back in 1974 when actually take it back. They're saying this because this came out in 81. This is when they're saying that. So the LA Times, you had the Evening Sun, and the Tennessean, we're just saying, oh, it's a horrible. The movie came out in 1974 overseas. I think it might have done a little better over there because most people were used to Sonny Chiba, and all that stuff. The Street Fighter, all that stuff. So of course we know that Americans are snobs when it comes to certain things too that they don't understand or it's new to them. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are, unfortunately. But I gotta say though, Chuck Norris being a bad guy, this isn't the first time we've seen a bad guy. Yes, he went against Bruce Lee. It's kind of the same kind of this, and then we saw him in another movie too. I believe wasn't there another one where he was after this, where he was the bad guy?
Well, we've been saving the hitman. I mean, that's really kind of what it comes down to. But we've covered, like, say, I don't know that we covered Breaker. We may have.
No,
but we've kind of started going in order with Chuck Norris movies because it was after this film that he started being like the choreographer for the fight sequences, so they would be his own.
The one I'm thinking of is the one with the casino. That's what we reviewed it. I'm trying to remember what it's called. I have to look it up. But there was one review where Chuck Norris was the bad guy. He was and he went against somebody, and he was like oh man, it wasn't Hitman. I know I have to look it up.
No.
And we know we reviewed a lot of his.
Drawing a blank on that one.
I know there's so many.
Doesn't sound like anything I've seen with Chuck Norris. No, but the thing with Chuck is, like I said, this is one of the earlier ones. And to me, when you look at what he's done, obviously he's got an extensive catalog. We've been saving the Hitman partly because it's like his last time where he's like a heavy before he goes into Walker, Texas Ranger, and continues his wholesome image. And he wasn't young when he got into acting. He's an older gentleman, so the fact that we get to see at least a little bit of him in prime, I think is kind of interesting. So this film, now I'll sum it up here though. The main dude, he's not bad. He's a charisma vacuum to me, but again, this is not an American film, so I'm trying to picture this movie playing overseas, in like Hong Kong or anywhere else, Indonesia, let's say, and people going, oh, there's the American guy, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy, Chuck Norris, the main dude that was really, really big at the time. I can see why this would be effective over there, just like you and I picked out some movies. We recently talked about Fearless Hyena. Nobody really knows about it unless you're a huge Jackie Chan or martial arts mark for it. But you recognize that was the beginning of him starting to direct, and what a big deal it was. And we remarked on some things we saw about it as well. So again, this movie's horrible in a really good way, but it captures that 70s blaxploitation thing with the music, with the score, with the shots. It's a movie that when you're watching it, you go, it's probably would have been a fun thing to be a part of, or at least you think about it, because you're like, hey, I get to be the pimp that calls people in. I get to eat grapes and watch people kill each other. I mean, it's like talking about it like that sounds kick-ass, doesn't it?
Yeah. So the movie I was talking about was Forced Vengeance. In the very beginning, remember, he was the bouncer guy.
But he's a bouncer. He's not a bad dude.
He was a bouncer. He was a lackey for one guy, and then he turns good. No.
And scotch drinking god Michael Cavanaugh in there as the heavy with the staff at the end happens to play the sheriff in the Dark Shadows revival 1991 season 1 TV series. Professor Pixel and I are currently covering episode by episode Sunday nights. We've just finished episode 9. We've got a few more to go, so check that out here on the Xtreme Movie Show. And RDV, I'll just say this for our closing thoughts. I think we pretty much talked all that needs about the movie. Definitely worth a watch if you're into this kind of stuff. It's massively entertaining on a level, which is really what we're asking about now, how good the film is. But I thought it would be nice if we closed with a few Chuck Norris factoids, because, you know, every now and then these Chuck Norris jokes come back in full force. And ever since I put on this broadcast and we decided we were going to do this one here, I've seen ones that I've never, ever heard before. So I'd like to share one with you if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. When Chuck Norris left his college, I'm sorry, it's hard to keep a straight face. When Chuck Norris left for college, he told his father, "Now you're the man of the house." Then there's the eternal question when we think about Liam Neeson and all the people that have had a second or third win in their careers, action stars over the hill ones. It would be this. I wonder what would happen if Chuck Norris kidnapped Liam Neeson's daughter.
If you ask Chuck Norris what time it is, he always says 2 seconds till. And after you ask, 2 seconds to what? He roundhouse kicks you in the face. Chuck Norris does not sleep. He waits.
Yeah, I've heard that one.
Have you heard this one? If you smell Chuck Norris in Scrabble, you win forever.
I once dreamt I had a fight with Chuck Norris. I woke up 3 days later in intensive care.
When God
said, the last one I have,
I've
got 2 more. Go ahead.
When God said, "Let there be light," Chuck Norris said, "Say please."
He wears a hat to protect the sun from him. All right, do you have any more? I've got 1 more. Well, I've got 2 more. I'm sorry. I always have 2 more Chuck Norris jokes.
All right. Oh man, there's so many of them. There's
Chuck Norris once threw a grenade that killed 50 people, and then it exploded. All right, the last Chuck Norris one, I promise, and then we'll call it.
There you go. Here's mine.
Go ahead.
Some kids pee their name in the snow. Chuck Norris could pee his name in concrete.
And finally, when Chuck Norris was born, he drove his mom home from the hospital. Thank you, Chuck Norris. I'm going to cry when he goes. I'm telling you that right now.
I love this one. This is my favorite one that I always see all the time. Once a cobra bit Chuck Norris' leg. After 5 days of excruciating pain, the cobra died.
Yeah, Black Belt Jones, Johnny, honestly, I swear to God, Black Belt Jones is one I've been trying to find a good print for, because I've been wanting to do that ever since day one. That's phenomenal. RDB, that's definitely been on the short list. I think for Black History Month, that's definitely a good selection there in Black Dynamite. There's a whole bunch of them out there, but let's put Black Belt Jones on the short list. It's something you and I would definitely like. Massive fun stuff, everything to it, or definitely 70s vibe to it. I've even been trying to do the Blackula films there too. When we get to Halloween, we just other ones knock them out, but there's just so much. And Johnny's got one. Let me read this and we'll close it. Chuck Norris has his own water. Chuck Norris heard you were thirsty, so he punched the ground to make the earth cry. Next time we do a Chuck Norris movie, we'll announce it ahead of time.
Johnny, if you haven't checked out our playlist, go check out. We covered Breaker, Good Guys Wear Black, Force of One, Octagon, Eye for an Eye, Silent Rage, Force Vengeance. We've pretty much covered a lot of them. Missing in Action, Lone Wolf, McCade, Invasion USA, Code of Silence. Oh man, we've covered pretty much almost all of them, except for some of the sequels. Sidekicks is we still have to cover.
I think we did Hero on the Terror was the last one we did.
Yeah,
and the idea was that we were trying to go in order with Chuck, because we if you go back and listen to him and everybody else here on the Xtreme Movie Show, you'll see that, like I said, we were an 80s based channel. We try to relate things to it, because I'm a child of the 80s, RDB is a child of the 90s, Professor Pixel's a child of the aughts, whatever you want to call it, the 2000s. So we have these 3 different perspectives about stuff. When we go to watch a film, Many times for some of us here, it's a first watch. So we're trying to compare it to what we expected, what we came out before. I try to offer any historical context just from, growing up in the 80s, what it was like if it was that type of a film. That's why I like to put in canon classics in it, because Chuck Norris was the face of canon in the 80s. And canon just basically said, hey, we're going to make entertaining, fun films on the cheap. And there's a lot of just wholesome goodness in them too, just fun stuff. And it's one thing to have everything dark and gloomy and digitized like it is today in film, but there's something to be said for just something that's kind of fun with a lot of action in it, that you go, I just want to see people beat each other up and zone out. And this movie, Slaughter in San Francisco, does it. So if you're a Chuck Norris fan, martial arts fan, I'm not saying it's the high end one, and if you're a martial arts snob, you might feel it's lowbrow kind of stuff. We told you ahead of time, it's a blaxploitation type movie that Chuck Norris was only in it for a little bit as the heavy. That's your hook. It's good enough to watch. Trust me, there's worse out there. And this makes up for it with volume of stuff, not necessarily quality.
The man's only 82 years old. He could probably still do some action movies I want to watch. Yeah. I want him doing action movies until he's like 93.
All right. Any other final thoughts? Anything you need to plug as we close it up?
Not much, man. Just check out our Chuck Norris playlist. We can go wrong with that. And if you haven't seen Breaker, go watch it. It's fun.
Yeah. Black Belt Jones, Johnny, I do like that recommendation there. It's jotted down, or where we're like that. We're going to take a look at it. Might be next Tuesday, Valentine's Day. That sounds
also
awesome.
Be sure to leave comments after the stream. It helps with the algorithm, gets us shared out more.
Yeah. And again, just a shout out and a thank you to everybody. John, I know you've come here a lot, and other people have popped in too. This is a last minute stream rather than some of our planned ones, and that happens a bit. Obviously, Sunday nights, Tuesday nights are our big ones. I want to thank everybody for spending some time with us. And obviously, the best thing you do besides that is letting other people know we exist. We're really close to 1,000 subs. It's something we just started off as a hobby doing for fun on our own with no pressure on it. But it seems like enough people out there seem to enjoy talking about and all that too. So we take the fact that people are willing to give up a bit of their day or evening or drive time or whatever with us, even if it's for a few minutes. So definitely appreciated getting the word out there too. We like suggestions. So Johnny, again, thank you for that. Black Belt Jones is a goodie.
Check us on Tuesdays and Sunday nights.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. As always, stay extreme.
Later, guys.